High-speed internet is instrumental in transforming the livelihoods of millions, not only in India but around the world. Due to low digital literacy and weak internet infrastructure, governments aim to implement common service centers in 2.5 lakh villages by March 2017 is facing a strong setback. Public internet access can achieve the objective of ensuring high-speed access to internet to empower millions of Indians digitally.
Our next session at the Digital India Summit 2015 is dedicated to public internet access, the third pillar of Digital India. Let's welcome our panelists for this next session. Mr. Sanjay Kaul, MD India and SAARC Cisco. Arvind Gupta, BJP Head, Information and Technology. Srikant Sinha, CEO, NASCOM Foundation. Pawan Duggal, Advocate, Supreme Court of India and cyber law expert. Srinivas Surapani, Vice President, Commercial Excellence, Schneider Electric India. And Nigel Eastwood, Group CEO, New Call Telecom. The session will be moderated by Vishal Jain, Partner Advisory Services, EY.
The objective of this particular pillar is actually to see how we can have internet going to the deepest or the remote places within India, and that's how this public and internet access program is designed. Before we get into the specific detail, I would request Dr. Arvind, if you can speak on this particular pillar in terms of what is the vision when we say public internet access, and what was the thought behind it and the expectations from this pillar.
Today we are discussing whether we can go from 2G to 3G or maybe to 4G. So, and we are discussing whether broadband should be defined as 512 or 2 Mbps or what it is. The public internet access program is a program that enables and empowers a billion Indians. And the needs of every billion Indians, the quest for information for all this billion Indians is equal. Unfortunately, we have only reached so far about 220 million, which is about 22 crores. The person living in any part of India, remotest part of India, a young person today wants to learn the best that is happening in India and across the world, as much as any person studying in this neighborhood. Right. And I think that's where the internet becomes a great leveler. Now, the term that we have introduced, and this is something that we talked about in the BJP manifesto, and why this is relevant is because this manifesto is one of the, in a way, the vision document for the government, is RURBAN. Rural India gets all the urban facilities. And the digital India part of it, providing the internet access to the billion Indians is part of that. They should also be able to access the best medical facilities, the healthcare facilities using telemedicine. So that is the basis of it. So this is all content that needs to be consumed. The infrastructure needs to be laid to make sure that it reaches the people. It reaches the people in a language that they understand. And the public internet access program, apart from providing low-cost access in a technology that is relevant to them, also talks about 2-3 important issues which I do want to bring about. One is access, which is affordable. Secondly, it should be in local languages. And thirdly is there should be meaningful content, local language content, Indian content available.
Great. I think that's a good vision. Nigel, I mean, we heard you talking about your experience in other countries. If we ask in terms of you have been seeing India for last over a decade now and going to deep villages and other areas. Where do you compare the infrastructure or from a service provider's perspective, comparison of Indian environment deploying for the last mile access compared to what you have done in other countries?
Well, our experience is largely in Europe and particularly in the UK, where we, as I mentioned earlier, we run the 5th largest internet service provider. What we've enjoyed in the UK is an ability to ride on the infrastructure that, if we turn the clock back, was ultimately rolled out by public sector, by the government. And that really democratised the internet for all in the UK. Ultimately, what happened in the UK was BT was formed, and BT created a wholesale access network right across the UK, much similar to the national fibre optic network that's being rolled out here in India today. So what happened in the UK was an enablement for consumers to access the internet by the government really creating a competitive and fair landscape for service providers like ourselves to participate in. So, one of the key drivers to unlocking connectivity in India is creating that backbone that is fair, is available for a range of service providers to access. And they can innovate around that. It becomes a lot more challenging when we start to look at semi-rural and rural India. Right. Because there's just not the backhaul there. Yeah. We've not got, I guess, the disposable income necessarily, or the concentration of population to make it really attractive to actually get the connectivity out there. So we've got to look at a hybrid model. So we've got to look at technologies that empower edge and 2G technology, and a mixed sort of topology where we integrate Wi-Fi as a connectivity. We've talked about satellite as an option. I don't think there's one real ubiquitous access solution for the rural population.
I think two things which you mentioned. One is the hybrid model when it comes to deployment because of the constraint which we have. And I also taking clue from what Dr. Arvind said in terms of access which is affordable and content available in the local language. So it's a very much Indianized and customized infrastructure which we are looking at. Sanjay, if I come to you and ask where you think that entire infrastructure innovation to cater these typical requirements which are very unique to our country.
If you look at internet and the evolution of internet that happened in the last 3 decades, I think the first phase was about connecting. I'm talking about the global internet, and we are part of that mix. So the first one was about connecting people, giving access to basic information. Then came to the second phase, which was about networked economy, which was bringing internet to the businesses so you can automate the business process and make them efficient. Then last 1 decade was about immersed experience, which was about social networks, internet going mobile, cloud coming into the picture. I think right now, the timing of the right government making the right vision for the country is perfect, because now we're entering a 4th phase of internet, and that's internet of everything. When you talk about making internet access to everyone in India, you're talking about 75% that are the rural India, right? We don't have basics in place. So I think here, technology enablement is what we bring to the fold. Right. We bring technology like DOCSIS. If you have a cable in your home, with DOCSIS you can get access up to 100 megabytes per second. We bring in public Wi-Fi, and I think we've recently created a piece of technology which makes public cloud-based technology, meaning the cost of bringing it to the masses is drastically reduced. So that's the second piece. I think third piece, what the gentleman on my left talked about was how do you get the local innovation in the mix? So what we've done as a company, we've brought in a funding to the fold. We've announced $40 million fund where we tap into people who have clever ideas out there in rural India that want to make it India-specific. So we're embracing those. So I think these are a few things that we're doing, but we're part of the puzzle. We're part of the ecosystem, and fundamentals need to be put in place. I think government has chalked out a vision of NOFN, which is bringing the backhaul and the dark fiber to 250,000 villages. I think that's a starting point. And if you have that in place, then all these technologies become relevant. So similarly, if you want to do internet on mobile, which is going to be a reality for majority of people out there in rural, then you need to give them enough spectrum. So fiber backhaul on one side, spectrum on the other, and on top of that, all these technologies that I talked about will make it happen.
I have gentleman Srini from Schneider Electric. I have two aspects for you to address. One is how can this public internet access be leveraged from the SCADA system? Because we have, before we go to any village as an internet, I believe we have to first go with a very basic energy infrastructure also, electricity and other area. Can that be leveraged and further automation using this infrastructure? Second, also coming from what I understand from a smart city point of view. I'm not sure how much of that entire smart city can be replicated in the time frame which we are looking for across India.
Sure. So I think I give you my response in two points actually. One is on the smart city, which is also one of the visions of Mr. Modi.
Yeah.
You know, by 2020 we want to have more smart cities. So Schneider, as a company, we have done a lot of smart grids, smart lighting, smart buildings. You know, for all of this, without internet, nothing is possible. While I say smart grid, a lot of automation, a lot of optimization, and there are a lot of unmanned sites where you want to manage them, so the network connectivity and all of this. So all of this are actually managed, and this will bring in efficiency plus a lot of connectivity which our peers have been talking about to the rural places. The second point is I would actually talk about the bottom of the pyramid. We're talking about internet, but today do we know that in the villages where we have, there's no water and there's no electricity, you know? So we go it is an ecosystem. We have to take that as a package going forward from here. While we also have to have a lot of emphasis on the trainings. A lot of emphasis on the trainings, a lot of emphasis on a BIPOP kind of a programs which we need to have in these rural places.
So I think so far we discussed about the supply side of it, where we have the infrastructure getting ready. Now, if we talk from the demand side, we have given him internet, but is he equipped to use that internet? How to use it? So the entire digital literacy is something which becomes critical from the demand side. So I have Shrikant here. Shrikant, I think from a need point of view, that becomes a very critical, important. So how should we address this part?
I think you have hit the nail on a very, very crucial question, because most of the times people are talking about whether internet is available or not. Right. But the question is whether they should also be able to use the internet. They should be able to harness the power. Today, out of the 1 billion dreams that we are talking about, 75% is rural. Okay, 73 to 75% rural, 45% is illiterate in India as per the latest Ernst & Young report, etc., out of which 33% are completely digitally illiterate.
Yeah.
So Government of India has come up with this scheme called as National Digital Literacy Mission. Typically, when you say about digital literacy, people talk about Word, how to boot up a system, and so on and so forth. While this time they looked at it differently and said, why don't we create a program which actually helps people understand how to use a smart device? Could be a mobile phone, could be a tablet, could be a computer, to help them with their livelihoods. Second thing, which is also very crucial, is that it has to be available, as everyone also on the panel said, in the local language.
Yeah.
With the CSR funding of various corporates, we are ensuring that we are able to reach out to these rural villages, etc., set up NDLM, National Digital Literacy Mission centers over there with these corporate funds and ensure that the rural people over there get trained. A couple of years ago, one of the large training IT providers created a project called as Hole in the Wall, where he put a computer system over there and let people interact with it. And that's how the whole thing has started. But today, it's a phase where we need to ramp it up. We need to reach out to the people, ensure that all this population which is there get digitally literate so that whatever is the vision that Arvind spoke about is actually realized.
Let's hypothetically think we are in 2020 and we have good infrastructure, we have internet access, people are digital literate, everything is there. What do you think, what will happen once everything is there? A lot of security, privacy issue, one from the user side as a citizen, the other would be, are there enough guidelines or regulations which will help ensuring that entire thing is secure and privacy is maintained?
Well, going forward, the first expectation will be we would want to have a right to free internet access. And that right needs to be codified somewhere. It should not be left to subjective interpretation of some court, whether you have the right or whether you do not have the right. Unfortunately, the law does not support any such right. Number two, what's the
right to free internet or right to freedom of speech on the internet?
I'm talking about right to access the free internet versus the right to freedom of speech and expression on the internet. Let's look at the existing legal frameworks. We have the IT Act. The Information Technology Act was a law meant basically for promoting e-commerce in 2000. It got amended in 2008, but public internet access word is missing under the IT Act. The first key element in India's context is, I believe, going to be cyber security. Well, when you provide free internet access on public places, what is the guarantee that the cyber security of the network does not get compromised? The bigger problem is, how do you actually control the misuse of the public internet access for cyber terror purposes? Go a step further. 2008, we made a historical mistake. We actually made almost all cyber crimes as bailable offenses, barring a few offenses. So today, if a man goes ahead and does some criminal access or criminal activity on the public internet access, well, he's reasonably satisfied that he will utilize the Indian Jugaad school of management and will just get out because the majority of the cyber crimes are bailable. So the time has come for us to revisit the existing cyber crime regime in the country to make it far more deterrent. That's the first component. The second component is the issue pertaining to you and me, our privacy. Well, it's unfortunate, India still does not have a privacy legislation. On top of it, we have this entire bigger issue of how do we ultimately deal with this entire issue of liability. Now, at the end of the day, when you're talking about some public internet access, you're talking about some service providers. Now, there will either be state players, there will be private players, but the law already is in place for intermediary liability because every service provider who's providing any internet access service on the ecosystem becomes an intermediary under the Information Technology Act 2000. That being so, Section 79 of the IT Act mandates these intermediaries to exercise due diligence while they discharge their obligations under the Act. Now, what kind of due diligence are we going to be expecting from these new age intermediaries? What kind of responsibilities can be straddled against them for purposes of ensuring that the network access that they provide is safe and at the same time equally reliable and reliant? You clearly will need to have specific customized guidelines for specific stakeholders, more so when you're going to make up the digital India ecosystem.
Before we formally conclude, in terms of from your different components of ecosystem which you represent, what is that one key important aspect which needs to be taken care for this particular pillar? Let's start from you and then we can have half an hour.
Well, the expectation is, it's single, but I think we all have to work together to make in India, to co-create in India, to bring this cost and the availability of the best technology to every household of India.
Okay. Nigel?
I completely agree. I think public-private partnerships is the way forwards. Collaboration, which creates alignment. So there's got to be a forum that creates that sort of think tank, that would create the alignment between the two parties.
Okay, Sanjay?
When we say we want to make it low cost, problem is, unless you feed the value chain that makes it happen, the whole ecosystem, it's not going to proceed. So you have to really innovate the business models where you agree with what Nigel said, create private-public partnership and get funding in place that at the end of the day is anyway helping the economy and make it sustainable for every person in that ecosystem.
Well, I'm confident that this internet, providing internet to the rural part can be done, just like that with Google doing a lot of things, Microsoft doing, and peers have talked about it. But I think one of the initiatives which NASSCOM has said, and which as a company we are also doing, we also actually parallelly have to start train and equip these people to be ready for tomorrow's internet.
I think you've already said what I wanted to say, but yes, of course. I think the onus is not only on a few companies, etc., that is there. I think onus is on all of us sitting in this room to ensure that at least can we go out today, and NASSCOM Foundation website, the NDLM program is available, level 1 program is available, freely downloadable. Please download it. It's my humble request to all of you. And please train your domestic help, your security guards, your entire ecosystem which is there, and make them digitally literate.
To conclude, if you have...
I think for digital India to be really successful, enabling legal frameworks have to be brought in place. And I think for that, a lot of homework needs to be done. The IT Act needs to have a relook. The rules and regulations need to be completely now adapted in the new digital realities that India is living. And more significantly, all attempts must be made to strengthen the hands of the government in terms of protecting and preserving India's sovereign interests in cyberspace.
I think that the last part is very important, and that is very... So I think let's conclude here. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for the audience for patient listening. Thank you all.